X by Sterling Willie, aka
Uchi. Malcolm X, the African-American activist and minister of black Muslim faith, challenged Martin Luther King's plan for nonviolent integration during the Civil Rights Movement. Malcolm X rejected integration with white Americans and also opposed nonviolence, encouraging his followers to defend themselves against racial aggression with any means necessary.
Well, for the past 10 years, the struggle in America has been confined to what has been projected to the public as a civil rights.
Hey, my name is Sterling Willie. I'm here with my special guest, Michael Dickerson. I'm here to ask Mr. Dickerson 3 essential questions about Malcolm X and what he did to affect the civil rights movement. So, how would you say he affected the civil rights movement, Mr. Dickerson?
Well, the continuum that would show Malcolm's actions was and remains to be unparalleled to this day. Malcolm affected the civil rights movement in both a negative and positive way, and I say that because at the time of the civil rights movement, when Dr. King preached nonviolence, Malcolm X, his strategy was by any means necessary. And I think in a way, some people that got tired of Dr. King's analogy or the strategies that he was using to gain freedom for African Americans, it weighed in, and Malcolm's message became more prevalent at that time, giving the people a better hope than what they had been seeing in Dr. King, which made them turn from the nonviolent act to any means necessary.
My second question for you, Mr. Dickerson, was what was his role in the civil rights movement?
Malcolm's role in the civil rights movement at that time was to actually recruit young black men and women to become part of the Nation of Islam and to carry that message from Elijah Muhammad out to the community all across the country with hopes that they would strengthen in numbers.
I got one last question for you, Mr. Dickerson.
Okay.
My last question for you was, how did Malcolm X affect your life specifically?
Well, and as a whole, I would have to say that Malcolm's views on what we should stand for, it was strong, and I could relate to how he felt at the time. But also, I grew up in the South, and hearing Dr. King's speech, it weighed in a lot heavier than what Malcolm X's speech did at the time and their beliefs. I would have to say that Malcolm was more conservative and Dr. King was more liberal. Today, I would have to say that Malcolm X's actions were basically that of a man who saw a better future for his people. And at the time, he was going about the wrong way of gaining that power for black people. But then going back into history and seeing how he teamed up with Dr. King after coming over from Mecca and coming back to enlighten the people that they had been brainwashed by Elijah Muhammad, it spoke volume. It was very instrumental when I come to think of it. But overall, I think that Malcolm X was a great man. He went through the trials and tribulations that a lot of black men, young black men, go through in these days and times. And when I say that, I mean by him being a troublemaker and going to prison and serving a prison sentence and getting out and turning his life around and trying to make a difference within the black communities around this country. So in the same light or on the same spectrum that I would rate Dr. King, I would have to give Malcolm X that same respect all over again.
And I want to thank my guest, Michael Dickerson, for weighing in on Malcolm X. Thank you, sir.
You're welcome.
My call to action is that Malcolm X wouldn't want us to fight amongst each other, but he would also want us to take a stand against racism in America. He would want all of us in the community to work together to fight racism and stop the violence.